Well, hello there. Today we're going to check out a cool plugin from a company called Black Salt Audio, and it's like a drum voodoo de-bleed plugin. And yeah, so here's a little sound clip that we can check out mixing some live drums using this plugin. So that's how it sounds. So there's a lot of companies that have tried to do this sort of de-bleed in a natural way and try to get that kind of trigger sound without having, without just completely doing sample replacement or using extreme gating, which you usually lose a lot of the sustain in the drums. So yeah, so let's start off by checking out the kick drum. I'm going to go ahead and leave on the master bus, which you saw a little bit of there. I'll turn off the little plate, which is just being used there in the intro to kind of have that ambience thing. We just have the Amic giving a little high and low. We have the Better Maker giving us a little bus compression. Saturn for a little top end saturation. And then some Pro L2 doing the limiting. And that's actually limiting pretty hard. So we got it going around 8-9 dB on some of the snare hits and a little less than that on the kick hits to really have those come through. This last gain plugin is just lowering the gain for the sake of this recording, so it's not actually doing anything as far as what you're hearing. I'm going to actually boost that up later on. So yeah, so let's check it out. Here's the kick by itself, and now I'll turn everything off. And if you kind of see over here, I actually don't have anything going on the separate tracks. They're all grouped together using these track stacks you can do in Logic. I have a little bit of this pillowy frequency being removed from the kick in mic. And then they're all being treated over here in the later end. So let's take a little section. So if we turn on silencer, it's doing a pretty good job. So here, when you open it up, it kind of starts off at 100%. So the 0% is a little counterintuitive, I would say. But if you subtract it, you notice we start to get a little more of those cymbals and the snare bleeding through. And if we were to go much higher, it's going to be a very heavy gate. The other controls you get in here is length, which is basically like release. So that'll kind of control how much sustain you're getting. The reduction is basically like your range in a regular gate. So it's choosing how much is going to be taken away when the gate is activated. And then you have these ghost notes, which is really cool. You don't need it for a kick, obviously. Maybe you do, but not with this kind of more rock heavy metal playing. So it's going to be working a lot more for us over there on the snare. Besides that, just so you know what's happening as far as the sound goes with the kick, we have this smack attack from Waves giving us it's a transient designer, giving us a little more attack. We have our EQ happening there. We were not using trigger, so you weren't hearing that. Our bass, I really like this kind of more round sound you get from it. So it's always being used for me. We're using actually just the stock Logic Focusrite plugin, and we're using the good old Kramer tape for our tape saturation. I'll turn those on one at a time so you can hear how the drum sound, the kick sound kind of came together. Yeah, so that's the kick right there. And now let's jump over to the snare. So I really like this Ghost knob. I think there maybe can be some stuff done to it to eventually kind of increase its accuracy, as I feel it's a little hesitant as it's kind of acting. But when you throw it into the whole mix, it actually really brings out those ghost notes. So let's check that out real quick, and I'll kind of toggle it on and off for you. It works. It works. I wouldn't say perfectly, but the great thing is you can actually automate it going on and off. So when you know you really want them in there, you can kind of automate it up. You can automate everything in this plugin, just as you can with most everything in DAWs nowadays. So you can kind of choose a little bit of everything. So if we were to open that gate up so you can hear how that sounds. Oh, sorry, we'll solo the snare for you. So you notice it does get a little darker the more you crank in that silencer de-bleed knob. So I try not to go too heavy there. Just to go through the individual mics real quick. On the snare top, we're scooping out everything up to 169 with a 48 dB octave curve to just take out the kick hits. Have this very strange looking EQ, but that's how it ended up. And doing pretty much the same thing as far as it goes on the bottom, and a small bit of EQ happening there. Just pulled out frequency that I didn't like, and then kind of scooping these frequencies. This is like a little bit of graininess you get in the top of a snare, and down in the body you kind of have the radio frequency. If you take that away, it kind of makes the snare sound a little bit more forward. So that's removed prior to the snare being done together. So let's hear how it comes directly in without the plugin. And we can turn off our reverb. So we'll leave the ghost notes off for now, for the sake of hearing the individual hits. Blah, blah, blah. First up, we have the good old SPL Transy Designer. Adding attack and sustain there, as I really like this drum sound in particular, and I wish we actually would have maybe dampened it a little bit less. But it was like it was. Then we have the Kive Extressor, which is a distressor style compressor, and sounds great. So doing some saturation in there as well. We have the Mag EQ, giving us quite a lot on the air band, they call it. Sounds great. The Aphex Vintage Exciter, Aural Exciter. I really wanted just more crack. Without just cranking in more EQ, and I think I really got it with that. I was not using this SDRR2. It's another saturation plugin. It sounds good, but just didn't end up using it in this situation. The compressor. The Studio FET, it's actually just the Logic stock compressor, which I believe is, You know, I actually am not sure exactly off the top of my head which compressor this is. I would guess it's like a 1176 black bass kind of modeled compressor. Sounds great. And then we have some tape happening as well. I shouldn't say some tape, it's actually doing quite a lot if you really hear the sizzle and the smack. It's kind of controlling it and giving us a little more of the pop of it. So yeah, so that's our snare sound right there. And he really didn't hit any toms in this entire little lick here, but we do have a couple toms happening. So let's turn everything off, and here's how it sounds. Sorry, here's just the tom. So yeah, you hear a lot of snare in there. And if we turn it on, pretty magical. Of course, it's always a bit of a compromise with live drums. That's just what it is. But when you put everything together, you don't really hear those. It doesn't sound so clacky on those little bleeds. Here's the EQ for you that are curious. Nothing too out of the ordinary. And then we have the compression. I'll turn those on one at a time. With everything. So in case you're wondering what else happened in this mix, the guitars are pretty straightforward. We're using a little bit of compression on the DI signal to kind of give it more of that EMG style effect before we hit the amp sim. On the left side, we have the BDH3, which is the EVH3 style emulation, doing the same thing on the right with the compression. And we have the 5169 there, so the 5150 style amp. On the bus, you have our main EQ happening over there. Pro MB doing just like that kind of Andy Sneap style trick on the chugs. A small bit of compression, soothe, and I always think amp sims sound a lot better with just a small bit of reverb to kind of put the guitars in a space. It's really low in the mix, but it's there. On the bass, we're doing a little bit of EQ and compression to try to get that muscly sound that I really like from Dingwalls. I don't have a Dingwall, but I have a pretty nice bass, so it's not too far from that kind of sound. We're using this Parallax from Neural DSP. Cornef Audio, if I pronounced that correctly, has this really cool L1 style limiter. And a slight bit more EQ rolling off the bottom end, and track spacer to give space for the bass, to give space from the bass for the kick. Yeah, so let's check those out real quick. Here's the guitars. Here's the bass. And here they are together. And here's everything together. So that's it, Black Salt Audio's Silencer, an incredibly beautiful transparent drum gate / D-bleed plugin that, yeah, really just does what you need. These drums were recorded by my good friend Alexander Lundgren in Top Floor Studios, where I snuck in on a day when Jacob Herman was out. The drums do go through the SSL, where I probably did a small bit of expansion and compression and EQ on the console. Nothing you wouldn't be able to accomplish in the box, but when you can use an actual SSL, why would you not? So yeah, till next time, stay heavy.